clarified part of the issues and problems in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. We have this wonderful invention in India called the Indian stretchable time. We can always find time to listen to things on such depth that you have spoken. Before I open it up for questions, there was something very topical that sort of links all the world together today, and that was COVID. And I have it before me, international news that the International UN RWA and others have said that medical relief, particularly mother and child, will be available to Palestinians in Gaza, especially women and children. But we also have another report which says that Israel, which also recently launched its COVID protection vaccine program, is being extremely discriminatory in who
Absolutely.
to inoculate and who to not. So before I ask substantive questions on the military and political situation, I thought the humane situation, what is really of immediate issue to every child, mother and father, if you could spare a few minutes on that.
I mean, first of all, the situation in Gaza is humanitarian at the moment, and the human situation is aggravated. Though it's a humanitarian, but by the end of the day, it's pure political situation, because it's a human-made. It's not an earthquake that hits Gaza or a volcano. It's because of the Israeli measures and policies. During the times of the pandemic, I remember Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, when the pandemic was widely spread, he made a very significant statement saying that it's the time for the different states to unite and to put aside conflicts. However, in the case of Gaza, the measures have been intensified, and vaccines, for example, so far are not allowed because they are Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza Strip. And even not only that, Palestinian prisoners inside Israel were totally denied to be vaccinated, while the Israeli citizens have been. But recently they have allowed, because they have a high court decision on this, but the state will not even make it accessible to the Palestinian prisoners because they are Palestinians. Now in Gaza and West Bank, it's very problematic. Gaza, to cope with the pandemic, it's really out of its capacity and out of its control. Gaza under blockade for more than 14 years, and in this case scenario, it cannot cope with the pandemic that states and governments have failed to do some real positive results on this. So imagine Gaza with the very devastating economy and healthcare system to cope with this, and we'll continue with the measures on access, as I said, regarding patients. It's make it very difficult, and now with the pandemic, it's beyond the capacity of Gaza, while Israel is abusing this in a very collective punishment way. Yeah.
Discrimination in the times of COVID for prisoners and other Palestinian citizens of Gaza would, in a better climate, verge on a crime against humanity and
Absolutely.
would be judged internationally as such. But we live in strange times. This was a political issue, of course, but there are more political questions, and Laila Passa has been pressing us with a flood of questions, but there is a very important one on how do we continue to focus on BDS without being diverted to the COVID crisis? And my first question ties up with that, and therefore I thought I'll ask you, how do we respond to this?
Well, I think at the moment, before I address it, let me just focus on a little bit on the shrinking space that all of us are facing, especially we who are on the ground in Palestine. Recently, we have been targeted by those fake campaigns, those who would reach the red lines asking for accountability and end of impunity. Definitely they will be targeted. and with the Trump administration, that has shaped what has been very stable since the Second World War until very recent. So those who, and we began our talk before we go online, on the issue, the borderline between what is anti-Semitic and what is anti-Zionist, and it has been. I mean, the borderlines have been almost deleted. So if you criticize, then you are anti-Semitic. Under the pandemic, I mean, I think one should also be clear on this, that it cannot be tolerated. The kind of those apartheid policies, discriminatory measures against Palestinians, and all the time there is room for this. But many has been terrorized, been subjected to this panic by being potentially under this those campaigns. I remember Human Rights Watch, even not only non-governmental organizations, but also the EU was targeted because they found NGOs in Palestine. So the whole rationale behind this campaign is to delegitimize those organizations, delegitimize their professional work, and on the other hand, targeting their donors and terrifying friends and those. So imagine talking about human rights. I'm not talking about BDS. So BDS is also being criminalized in many states, in the United States, for example, and many other parts. But all the time there is a room, I think, and I think it's a moment where we should say the word and pass it. People are paying a very high price out of those policies, not only in Palestine, but also in different places.
Thank you very much for that. We have a question, an important one at that, from Aruna Shanta Nonis. We see the situation getting worse in Gaza, but still West Bank is somehow connected to the outside world. How the Palestinians in the West Bank work in solidarity with the people in Gaza?
It's not a matter of solidarity. It's one people. Palestinians are one living in many geographies, and their cause is the same cause, and the problems are the same under occupation, and they all fighting to have their own state and self-determination. So it's not solidarity with Gazans. It's beyond that. It's being part of. And look, the Israelis, and that was part of the dynamics of the blockade and the Oslo process. One of the facts that are there that has resulted out of this process, where Israel have utilized time and abused it up to the maximum to create facts, as I said, are irreversible. So they have worked on the fact that to transfer Palestinians from being a nation to communities. So community of Gaza, its problems is electricity and access in the West Bank, problems of, settlements, economic-based problems. In Jerusalem, it's the discriminatory laws and the taxes, Arnona and other stuff. So this is the Israeli made, how they fragmented the geography and the demography. And moved as if Palestinians in Gaza we are talking now only about Gaza, unfortunately, but it's a fact. So it should be Palestine, but I mean Gaza as a case became serious case because the Israelis have done their business on that. So where Gaza is different from West Bank is different from not only West Bank, the South and North of West Bank is trying to be different. The same thing with Jerusalem, but I believe that Bank and Gaza is one territorial unity. The national identity is quite clear. And it's both are seeking the same goals and their inalienable rights to be executed. And the manifestation of this unity that you, Mr. Dale, just mentioned regarding elections, potential elections in Palestine, in the same time, in the same on the basis of the same law that was recently promulgated by the President Mahmoud Abbas. So. It's one territorial unity. However, the Israelis are trying to fragment and Palestinians trying to put things aside. I hope the internal division to be ended very soon and back to the track, because it's a very, very long way towards getting our legitimate rights.
Yeah, I have a question from Brunel D'Souza, but before I speak the question out, I've been listening to the confirmation debates, hearings, congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. And so I think I have that as a background also to ask. And the current news of this morning, Israel has opened yet another embassy in one of the Arabian countries. In that context, as Brunel asks, will the Biden administration mean a shift in a policy, the US policy presumably, towards Palestine and of course the Gaza Strip?
We hope so, but Obama was in the office before Trump, and we again became further than time to achieve peace and justice. The Trump administration was the worst administration ever, not only for the Palestinians but also for the whole peace and security, justice in this globe. We are optimistic that the Biden administration definitely would be different, back to the traditional American positions on this regard. The two-state solution, the settlements to be illegal, etc. Those are the main classical stance of the United States. We hope that Mr. Biden refix the image, refix the facts that were created on the ground, and not to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel. It's the America and Israel on one hand, while the rest of the humanity is on the other hand, who agreed to leave Jerusalem to the final status negotiations. And East Jerusalem is part of the occupied territory, whether Israel like it or not. It was occupied in 1967. The legal status of the holy city is occupied territory. So, I mean, here we expect Mr. Biden to take the necessary measures to preserve peace and security and to put things back to the track. It's only the end of this conflict peacefully, where Palestinians could get their own rights in this regard, mainly while I'm insisting and highlighting rights, because I mean, also we need to fix and to correct something here, that Palestinians are not fighting for a state. We are fighting for rights, our rights, self-determination, the right to return, etc. And the state is, just became item one on the agenda. While we are not, it's not to find a geography to stand over. It's rights that have been adopted by the United Nations, and it's part of what the Palestinians are eligible for, to have self-determination. The state could be part of this option, the self-determination, but also the right to return and the right to control their natural resources, their borders, etc.
And I think the Trump years and the situation elsewhere in the country, including, as somebody just pointed out, the situation of the original people, or the aborigines, or the tribals and the indigenous people, as we call them, in many other countries. The Philippines has been mentioned, and we know about India, we know about Latin America, we even know about the US and Canada. There is a nuanced transition, you would say, from the Obama administration, which was an extension and a response of continuing from the Bush administrations, to what is the post-Trump Biden situation. And I take small hope, if I may say so, from his inaugural speech, with its heavy emphasis on human rights within the US. And I hope he translates it into a larger issue. So could you just say that maybe, just maybe, we need to make a more concerted reach out to the American people at large, to the Blacks, the Hispanics, and all of those who have given Biden his chance?
Absolutely, fully agree. And recently, we are in the final stages maybe tomorrow, I mean Monday, or we're going to submit a letter by the Carter Center, by some Israeli and Palestinian human rights organizations, highlighting what you just mentioned, Mr. Dyer, that the American administration, we expect from the new administration to act more genuinely towards peace and security for the Israelis and the Palestinians, and for the whole globe, because the multilateral has been jeopardized, has been damaged, and it's the time to reassure, to reconsider the whole multilateral based engagements, whether the United Nations, UNESCO, WHO, where Americans have withdrawn from. So it's a moment of truth, and we believe that this administration is definitely different, and we believe it's the time for Mr. Biden to make this true and tangible. And we believe that the Americans are who voted for Mr. Biden, definitely they support this process. Humanity is dying and very hunger towards peace, and I believe the Americans are definitely pushing this. But we need some more results, and not to overstep the facts that were created. For example, settlements. I mean, if we are pushing for the two-state solution, the Israelis made it mission impossible with the settlements and with the confiscation of land. So this should be reconsidered. So the two states option to be valid and to be item number one on the agenda, where the Biden administration could push for. But we believe that Mr. Biden is committed to this, and because he has a very rich engagement and very rich history and very rich professional background as a congressman and as a vice president, and he was deeply involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we believe definitely he will be different from Mr. Trump, and definitely I hope that we'll have a white smoke someday.
Inshallah. And thank you very much. We have practically been half an hour in the question and answer itself, and we're close to 1 hour into the program. Thank you indeed for that remarkable sweep that you always have on the issue and in explaining it to people for whom it may be a first time, or they may be committed, or they've just recently become aware that there is a time bomb ticking away in one part of the world. We live in a situation where the young are coming into their own every day, and they are the future, as we've discovered it in India. Thank you indeed. I've been asked to say what I feel about Palestine, about the Gaza Strip, about peace generally, and about human beings whose basic yearning, whose genes, whether there is a pandemic like Corona, whether there's economic crisis, whether people have died coming from home to their job, or died going back from the job they lost to their home, situation that we have seen in India, refugees from Burma, from many places coming to India, refugees, religious refugees coming from Pakistan in small numbers, but coming, a resident population of Tibetan refugees. We know what it means. And I think for us in India, of course, the larger question is to break some shibboleths, to break some boundaries of religion, of fascination with might is right, with the big stick, with the muscular masculinity, as a friend of mine normally calls it. She's a woman, so from her point of view, a muscular masculinity is something quite negative, and it is indeed quite negative. Like you, I would like to take hope from Biden's speech, from that young black girl's poetry, more than the speech itself. And I think to a small extent from the black and the Indian origin person who is the first woman vice president of the United States, Kamala. I do not know if the ethnicity of an individual in office matters. I do not know if the religion or the sex, gender that is, of a person in office matters, because ultimately their own national interests, the military, industrial combines, their friends in high places in other countries seem to always gnaw their way in. into their psyche and into their action, but yet it is human nature to hope. It is hope that we have here in India, where people, the farmers, as I told you, so many of them died. To the world at large, it'll come as a shock that 350,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years because they cannot pay back to the banks money they had taken to buy fertilizers and seeds, and the crops failed and they couldn't pay back, and the banks wanted the money. The rich can rob the banks and run away, but the poor can't afford to, and they committed suicide as the only escape from the debt that they're done. That is a tragedy, and the farmers encircled Delhi, the national capital, and they are being today termed anti-national, traitors, terrorists. A farmer on his tractor is being termed a terrorist. That is what governments do, that is what the powerful people do, that is what regimes do, to micromanage groups that are demanding, as you correctly said, and said so many times, you want nothing more than justice, human rights, not states, not kingdoms, not presidential palaces. You want rights as human beings, the right to be vaccinated against a pandemic, the right to have food, the right for a woman to give birth in peace without a bomb shattering that hospital, without rockets this way and that way, without barricades and ships totally stopping aid to a beleaguered man-made isolation, a large prison, not even very large, come to see by other international standards. And I think the world at large has its task cut out, as I say. And I always said that. Palestine, you correctly pointed out, means much to global peace. There is no way that we can have global peace if we have a ticking bomb on the Indo-Pakistan border, if we have a ticking bomb between Israel and Palestine and the various small segments, parcels of land that Israel has made Palestine into. We can't have world peace with ticking bombs in Africa or now in the South China Sea. World peace is an integral whole, it's a holistic thing. Every single time bomb has to be defused. And the oldest fuse and the oldest bomb is there in the annexation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the perfidy of the regime in Israel. And in India, as in many other parts of the country, we seem to confuse the regime in Israel with the Israeli people of the Old Testament. And in India, it's very, very strong among particularly certain groups of Christians, as in mainland America. I think this is a consistent, everyday, 24/7 education project. We need people like the young poet to sing the song of freedom and of hope of Israel and to sing it in all the languages. We need peace. Peaceniks should be a decent word once again. And with these thoughts and seeking your solidarity with our people, and extending our solidarity. Today, in the afternoon, my organization, the All India Catholic Union, 100 years old, one of the largest Catholic laity thing, transmitted its message of solidarity with the Indian farmers in 14 different languages, so that every Indian knows, not just in English or Hindi, the big language of India, but in its own mother tongue. Every child can understand what are the farmers crying for. And I think that is the sort of message. We have tried it in our groups in India, that the message of solidarity with Palestine, their cry, needs to be made available to every human being on earth in the tongue the child learned at the breast of its mother. Because the other thing it learned at the breast of its mother was the fact that the human being is different from animals, that there is an urge, yearning for justice, of equality, fraternity, what have you. I am like you. I'm also my brother's keeper, my brother's friend, because he is also my keeper. So in solidarity with you and your people, Yunus, I bid you thank you once again, and I bid you goodbye. Thank you very much for this wonderful webinar and for what you brought to it. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dael. I second what you just mentioned. Indeed, it's the time to reconsider peace, which is the human endeavor, regardless of sex, religion, or whatever grounds. I think we are united, and we should show solidarity with us. Why? By showing solidarity with the Indian farmers, we show solidarity with ourselves, actually, with our nature as a human beings, with dignity, and who should be respected as a human beings, fully supported. And from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate your words and your time to listen to me and inviting me for this valuable meeting. Thank you so much, and keep the good work in peace and solidarity. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Isam Yunus. We are with you and with all people suffering different kinds of blockades. Thank you, John, for very effectively moderating the sessions. Thanks to all who have participated. Special thanks to Rifat, who has also been accompanying us in all our webinars. Thank you and good night.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.